Hey guys, Mental Health Monday. Here we are. I'll wait for some of you to show up. Wait for Elisheva to come on. And in the meantime, hey, Mind on Heart, Bulimia T, Region, I don't know how to pronounce that one. Flasher Design, Gila Glasswork, Gila. Dr. Kozlowitz. All right, I see a lot of familiar names. Elisheva, thank you all for joining tonight. Let's go.
Hey.
Hi. Oh, you're sideways for me.
Oh, okay.
For you?
You're sideways for me too. Okay. Okay.
Let's see. Who's sideways, guys? To the people who are watching. There.
Oh, did I fix it?
For a second.
Oh, no.
Are you doing something differently than usual, or?
Oh, sorry. I'm dropping my phone now. Okay. Let me see
that works.
if I can. Yeah. You up in a way that I don't have to hold it for the whole hour.
Oh, did you have like a?
Yeah. So my stand is only like a horizontal. Am I diagonal now, or it's okay?
No, you're good. You're good.
I'm good. Okay. Hey, how are you?
Good. How are you? I mean, I know you've been on a few times already. I've just never been with you.
So. Yeah, this is our first time. So nice to meet you.
Yes. Nice to like officially meet you.
Yes, likewise. Likewise. Thanks for hosting me.
Yeah, thanks for coming on pretty last minute, right?
Yes, relatively last minute. I actually tried to like jot down some notes beforehand so I could like know what to talk about. I know you emailed me some questions, but pretty much doing this on the fly with you. So, we'll do the best we can
as we go. And I saw there are some other people who are on who have like a background in psychology, mental health, different things. So feel free to chime in, anyone, like in the comments.
Sounds good.
And Rebecca, yes, I am wearing the sweatshirt, the Project Practice sweatshirt. I was like, what should I put on that's cozy and like, I don't know. And then I found this in my closet. So
that's great.
Yeah. So if anyone doesn't have it, you can still buy it. It's always available. It's on our website.
Okay.
Okay. Anyway, so I'm sure a lot of people who are watching know a little bit about your background. But let's just do it for the sake of, familiarizing everyone.
Okay, sure. Do you want to introduce me, or should I just say what?
I usually prefer when, the person.
Oh, sure, no problem. Okay. Okay, so hi, I'm Elisheva Liss. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist in private practice, and I'm also a homeschooling mom. So that's why Rebecca thought it would be a good idea for me to do this particular live, because I was a homeschooler before it got cool with Corona to homeschool your kids, or necessary. I don't know if it's cool, but it's never really been described as cool, but it's certainly trending. And so this is something that I chose to do on purpose when I had the option to send them to school. And we have had so far, thank God, for a number of years, a very good experience with it. So I'm excited to be able to share with some of the people who I know are very overwhelmed at having their children home, to be able to share like some of the things that we do and we've done over the years to make it work well for us. So I think
let me understand. I'm sorry, just like in relation to Corona and having your kids at home. So my kids are young, like 3 and 1. So I don't have that homeschooling thing. I mean, I have brothers, but like it seems like a lot of schools are doing online programming, but so some schools aren't doing anything at all. Is that what's happening?
Right, exactly.
Okay. So they're expecting the parents to keep up with the curriculum?
Yes. So I haven't been like, these developments are changing every day. Like the client that I just was speaking to, actually her school is not canceling until midweek. So it kind of depends what neighborhood you live in and what kind of school you send to. What it seems to be is that the high schools are really providing and the colleges are providing online options. The elementary schools, it just depends on the school. So some of and everyone's sort of regrouping as we go along, because we didn't have a tremendous amount of time to prepare for this. This really developed very quickly. So I guess like that's why I'm going to rely a lot on the questions. I know you emailed me some questions that you got. We'll take a look at those. And if people want to chime in with questions on the live, because I really do want to be able to cater to the biggest, population that you have listening and watching. So for example, someone like you who has little ones, there's no pressure to educate per se. It's more just sort of just like keep them home and you're used to having them out and you have things that you need to get done. How do you juggle all that. You know?
Right.
So I want to be able to speak to the topics that are most important to people.
Yeah. So there were some very general questions, and then some of them got super specific, and then I think there were some that just was arranged to different populations, so we'll kind of go through those, and of course, like for the people who are on, we'll try to reach those ones first so that they can hear.
They're already here. Yeah.
Okay, because anyone can watch this on YouTube after.
Great.
And yeah.
Okay. Do you want me to start, or do you want to just dive in with the questions? How do you want to do it?
I can dive in with the questions. I just want to make sure you finish saying everything you needed to, because I know I answered.
Oh, okay. I segued. Right. So I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist. I'm also a homeschooling mom. My kids are a little bit older than some of your listeners. My youngest is 12, my oldest is 20, but we have been homeschooling for like 5 or 6 years. We did it like on and off a little bit at the beginning, but really more consistently in recent years. So, so I definitely, they used to be little, so I relate to the mothers of younger kids too.
Yeah.
So that's, that's my personal experience. I also wrote a book called Find Your Horizon of Healthy Thinking, which it talks about managing thoughts and emotions from a mental health perspective. And it's based on a technique that I developed in conjunction with my clients, where people are experiencing unwanted negative emotion or being flooded or just thinking in sort of overwhelming, unhelpful patterns. And they want to get out of it. Like they recognize and they notice like this is not helpful. And so the book goes through a narrative therapy technique, and I'm happy to talk a little bit about it here tonight also, to help people sort of like get ahead of their thoughts and their emotions so that they can get, a little more focused on being where they want to be at psychologically and in terms of their actions and relationships too. So the gist of it is basically that there are 3 primary ways that a person can interact with an experience. And we're usually talking about negative experiences, right? Because when you're having a positive experience, that's usually when we're doing well. So when we're dealing with a challenging situation, when we're dealing with difficulties, there are like 3 general ways. The first way that we look at is counterproductive, right? When we get flooded with unwanted negative thoughts and emotions and tend to over dramatize or catastrophize or trivialize, right? Like in any way that's just like not serving us. So that's the first way. And I actually have, I don't know if you could see it. I have on one of them is off the wall, but I have 3 pictures. I have beach pictures. One of them is this. It's like, I don't know if you could see like the waves sort of crashing on the jetty. These are pictures that I took because I love the beach. Then, can you see these other ones? Oh, okay. Sorry, I'm not good at photography. Then there's a boat sort of like floating on the surface of the horizon. And then there's another one here. Okay. Really bad at photography, guys. And then there's another one of a seagull sort of like flying over the horizon. And the Horizon Healthy Thinking uses the water horizon as a metaphor to show how thoughts and feelings go. Sometimes if you picture that line in the middle of the picture, right, the horizon where our healthy thoughts start. So sometimes we're sort of like getting sucked into the whirlpool of unproductive, unhelpful negativity, when we're getting overwhelmed, when we're thinking in very dramatic terms, when we're getting stressed out, and we feel it. It could be unwanted levels of anger, of sadness, of worry, depression, anxiety, self-blame, criticism, judgment, any kinds of like unhelpful thinking and feeling that kind of brings us into that like whirlpool of like yuck, right? And we know when we're feeling like that. Okay, so the first thing to do is identify it and say, okay, I'm not operating from my healthy place right now. So that's what we call a meta thought. Like you have an auto thought, the thought that pops into your head, and then you have a meta thought, like, oh, wait a second, I'm not in a good place right now. So then what you want to do is you want to get to be like the sailboat, just sort of like bobbing along, tracing the waves of the horizon, and say, hey, you know what? It doesn't need to be this bad. I can just sort of acknowledge the situation for what it is, as if I was telling the story about someone that I didn't know that well. Oh, they were going through a rough time and this is what was happening, right? And then the goal would be to say, okay, how can I take it even another notch higher? Like, how could I transcend the limitations and the frustrations of this experience? And then it forks in one of 2 directions, action and acceptance, right? Action is like, what can I do proactively to get myself into a better place or to get the situation a little bit better? And acceptance is saying, you know what? I don't think that the particular stressor that I'm dealing with right now is something that I have a lot of control over. And so I need to get to a place of just trying to cultivate a certain amount of serenity or hope or, internal, more productive experience so that I can get through this the way I know I will get through it. But, in better shape than I am right now. That's kind of like the gist of it.
Mm-hmm. feel like I should have written that down. That sounds like it could come in handy later in my life at some point.
You could read it in the book.
Yeah. It's all written down for me.
There's like a Cliff Note version on my Nefesh blog. If you go on nefesh.org, I blog in two places, elishevaliss.com and nefesh.org. So
and Project Proactive.
Pardon? And Project Proactive. Sorry,
so
I blog in 3 places. Yes, I'm relatively new to the Project Proactive blog, so definitely there too. Yes, and so I have a lot
I did actually skim read your narrative post that you did.
Okay, so the narrative therapy post talks about like sort of the foundation of what this technique is. The Horizon Healthy Thinking is one. It happens to be my narrative therapy technique, but narrative therapy is a much broader sort of a field or school of talk therapy.
Mm-hmm.
And it's wonderful because it's based on the idea that we can sort of rewrite our life stories even when we're not in charge of the entire plot, but we can choose like the language and certain options and empower ourselves to, to have more of an autonomous role in the things that happen in our lives.
It's very interesting. I tried to start writing like a story of my life right after I read your thing, and then I'm like, this isn't working.
I would start with one episode at a time. The Great American Memoir is hard to write when you have 2 babies.
Yeah, that is true.
Yes.
One day.
Yeah. A little journaling every day goes a long way. Like
I've been trying.
Yeah.
I don't know.
That's all we can do, right?
What? Yeah.
That's all we can do. We
Yeah.
can't do more than try.
I always have something in my mind that I'm like, that should go down on paper, and then just doesn't happen.
You know what? When you have little kids, like that's the #1 priority.
Yeah. Yeah. That's good. That is. It's true.
Not that the rest of your life has to go on hold, but you have to just like cut yourself a lot of slack, Yeah. Keeping tiny people alive is a lot of work.
Yeah. That's for sure. We do have some questions about little kids. If
okay,
that would be a good transition.
What
did you say?
I will try to answer those because I did used to have little kids.
Yeah. But I wanted to get to someone's question on here first that said, well, first of all, Rebecca said your book is awesome, which I didn't mention.
I hope it.
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
Wait, also, there's something that's on my mind that I have to say. I was like just on a Instagram thing this morning and just looking at people, and I looked on your page and I watched your coffee video, like the whole 3-minute thing. So that's like what was on my mind while you were telling your story. I'm like, she like makes really good coffee.
Did you try the recipe?
I didn't do it. I just watched it.
I make really good iced coffee, you guys. I don't do much else in the kitchen very well. Very no-frills food in the Liss household.
Wait, can I just ask you a quick question? Fancy. How do you get how does it, okay, I'll ask you later.
You really do want to talk about the coffee?
No, I don't. I'll ask you later. But anyways, the book is awesome. And then someone asked about what it's like, how you deal with being a therapist and managing your clients through this time. So.
Okay. Meaning working with clients and their anxieties.
Yeah. How are you helping them? Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm trying to help them the way I always help them with their anxieties. And an interesting thing that I've been hearing from a nice number of clients actually is that, so at first I was checking in with people who had high levels of anxiety, particularly medical anxiety or financial anxiety, all of the things that are being triggered by the coronavirus situation. And so many of them are saying things, and I've seen people who aren't my clients also saying this, online, saying that it's interesting. People keep worrying about them like, oh gosh, are you okay? But actually they're saying like, hey, now this is like my setting always. Like I always think the world is about to end. So now I actually feel validated. I had one who's like a hand washer, and she's like, no, I'm so happy because everybody's finally keeping up my standard of hygiene.
Yeah.
Like I used to be grossed out by the whole world because nobody was washing their hands to my satisfaction, and now I'm joking about it because they're joking about it. I don't mean to come off as insensitive. But yeah, so look, that definitely some people are kind of saying like, we've been practicing for this our whole lives. There are definitely people who are very triggered, particularly moms of young children who find themselves suddenly in a situation where they are, having these kids home that they didn't expect, and dads, but sometimes it just falls more often to the mom. People who are affected by the economic ramifications. There are a lot of very serious economic repercussions, financial repercussions that are worrying to people who have scarcity mentality, a lot of 2nd and 3rd generation Holocaust survivor descendants who are starting to like fear, like, okay, what if the world goes into deficiency mode? So what we're trying to do is we're trying to work with some of these thoughts and feelings that people are having. One of the definitions of anxiety that I think is very accurate is that anxiety is a tendency to let either the present or the past or the future smush out your present, right? So in the present moment, right here, right now, I'm okay, you're okay, there's food, there's toilet paper, there's like, we're reasonably okay, right? We have to take certain precautions, we have to follow certain medical and health recommendations, but like everybody right now in our, general circles is tends to be okay for the time being. And also we have to hell on lists, right? There are also people who are not so okay, but that's always the case, right? There's always people who are different gradations of okay. So in the present, to be able to like breathe and say, okay, right now, what do I need to be doing? What do I want to be focusing on? What do I need to be thinking about or setting up or planning for, whether it's for myself, for my children, for my job, and just kind of hold space for the present and understand, people who have anxiety about the past, whether it's trauma or regret or rumination. So that's one challenge. Right now, the anxiety challenge is more future oriented. What's going to be like, this is going to get worse. Look at Italy, right? I don't need to say all the gloom and doom stuff that everybody's been inhaling too much of online, right? It's not helpful. That's unhelpful negativity. So remember I said there are 3 ways that we could engage with a situation, right? Unproductive, neutral, or helpful. Now, notice I don't say negative or positive because there's such a thing as helpful negativity and unhelpful negativity, and there's such a thing as unhealthy positivity. So I try to stay away from like the negative positive binary split and move towards like healthy or unhealthy, because sometimes having a good cry, even though people might say sadness is a negative feeling, but it's actually a very healthy thing to do. Mm-hmm. So it's productive negativity. That's okay. Mm-hmm. So what we can do, and what I like about this model of those 3 ways of categorizing is I can't really think of another one. Like everything's going to fall into one of those 3 categories. And what you can do is when you're having an experience, notice how you're feeling and see if you can translate it into a more productive version of itself. So let's say somebody's having the panicky feeling of like, what if I don't have enough food, right? Like, let's say my fridge is not stocked up enough. Right. So then ask yourself, okay, so that's an unhelpfully negative feeling because you're going into scarcity panic mode. What could you translate that into that would be a more healthy version of itself? Is, well, do I need to look in my freezer and see if I need to get more food? Right. And if I look and I see I actually have enough food in my freezer to last a nice amount of time, I'm actually pretty well stocked, and in my pantry and whatever, I'm in pretty good shape. And also, I don't think there are any communities that we're talking to where all the stores are closed at this point. Right. So say right now I have enough food to keep us going for a nice number of days in my house, and also stores are open. Right. If you're looking in the freezer and the pantry and saying, oh, actually, it's the beginning of the week, I tend to stock my house for the week. On Monday, I need to go buy perishables. Then go buy perishables or order perishables if you're not supposed to leave your, wherever you're at with the levels of quarantine that people are doing. Then say, okay, so I'm concerned about having enough food for the week. So let me figure out what I can do so that I can have some food, in the house for whatever, and so then you sort of like analyze the thought that you're having, analyze the feeling that it's generating, get on top of it, notice like I'm not defined and I'm not obligated to buy into the thought or the feeling, and just sort of say like, what would be a more healthy, more helpful version of that, and then go with it, either do something about it or just edit it so that it feels calmer. Make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
I have a question on that. Let's say it's like more of a physical feeling of anxiety rather than like emotional.
Yeah.
So I feel like there's an extra step there in like identifying what it is. I don't know.
Yeah, like if it's somaticized, like if you have a knot in your stomach or a tightness in your chest, or your throat's closing up, or a headache, or the tingly feelings in limbs. So yeah, anxiety can manifest for a lot of people physiologically, not just mentally. But usually what that's doing is it's your body telling you what you're feeling emotionally. And generally speaking, most research will indicate that these feelings are generated by our thoughts. Maybe not immediate thoughts, but the thoughts that we have like mentally, cognitively, they trickle into our emotional, nervous system, and then it translates into our body. So you can access it the way I just did cognitively, or you can access it like what you just started to touch on is physiologically. So there are deep breathing exercises, there are meditations, there's yoga, there's cardio. Like sometimes when someone's going to have a panic attack and they don't, let's say they're not a benzodiazepine, they don't not necessarily taking medication, and they could say like, do 60 jumping jacks, right? Mm-hmm. Because what that does is it redirects the adrenaline from that like nervous feeling of like you're going to blow in your body to like, oh, you know what, I'm setting off a fight or flight movement in my body that is healthy. You know, like I'm creating a sense of urgency with endorphins instead of that like anxious adrenaline. So that's one thing to do. Sometimes people will do a dance party because music also, you know, kind of like activates different brain centers. And so then you're moving and listening to something you enjoy and, you know, entertaining whoever else is in the room. So, so when it's manifesting physiologically, there are physiological interventions that you could do for yourself. Because you're right, when you're feeling it in your body, saying the different, we're editing it in your head might not be strong enough. You might need to access it, you know, physiologically and somatically. So those are certain things you can do, you know, yoga, stretching, movement, music, distraction. Something that is very helpful, but I sometimes hesitate to recommend it, but I feel like I'm just going to toss it out there and recommend it and tell people to use it judiciously, is watching stuff. You know, because sometimes if you feel that panicky feeling setting in, whether it's physical or mental or emotional, and there's something like, you know, a funny show that you like to watch or a stand-up comedian or something, it's just like, you know, one of the nice things about the escapism culture of the media and of watching stuff is that we can choose what we feed our brain, like what channel our brain is watching, literally and figuratively. And so while I don't want to like suggest that it's a healthy thing for people to just always be turning on the TV constantly to escape their lives, but you know, it is like a decent quick fix occasionally to sort of say, you know what, right now I'm feeling like down or overwhelmed or stressed, and that comedian always makes me laugh. So like watch for a couple minutes and then, you know, redirect to something else.
Yeah. All I think when I think of TV is like getting addicted to a show, and then.
So that was why I preempted by saying it might not be the best idea for everyone or a good habit to get into. Right. The exercise mode is, and another thing that's always a great thing to do is have water. Because I know it sounds so simple, but the majority of people who are not hydrating intentionally and mindfully are walking around a little bit dehydrated a lot of the time.
Yeah.
Because for some reason, like God doesn't make us as thirsty as we need to be naturally feeling in order to get the level of hydration that science tells us that we need. So sometimes a good thing to do when you're feeling not great in your body or in your mood is to say, hold on a second, when was the last time I had some water? I always try to have like a water bottle or a glass of water on hand because it's just something that's good to take in on a regular basis and you know, to kind of notice how many ounces you're having a day, because very often just hydrating yourself just kind of like reboots your system and makes you feel better like pretty quickly. Also check if your blood sugar drops. Sometimes if you went too many hours without eating, your blood sugar drops, it affects your mood, you feel weak, and then you get irritable. So you don't want to go too many hours without food or drink.
Good tips.
Common sense, but
yeah, no, it's true. Like I feel like I've had these like revelations at different points in my life about how much food really does affect you, like how much water, like.
Yeah, grown-ups also get like cranky when we're hungry.
Yeah.
No, we're accustomed to telling, you probably are cranky because you didn't eat. I also get cranky if I don't eat enough.
Yeah, exactly.
Or if I don't eat good food,
And
you know, like if you're
you don't
day
sleep
with, like,
enough.
eating like sugar stuff, or if we don't sleep enough, right? Yeah, no, I'm saying like sometimes like you think you ate because you like inhaled a little bit of sugar, but it's like no, we need real food too.
Or like you fed your kids, so you're like, oh yeah, I ate.
Oh yeah, so somebody ate in the house, like that counts.
Someone asked a question. Do you see that one? Any thoughts about ticks and pandas?
Those are medical questions. I'm not a medical professional.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, good questions, but not qualified to answer.
All right. Well, if there is someone on here who feels qualified to answer, you can, you know, do
yes,
a little
yes. If there are any
comments.
medical doctors or PAs or somebody who wants to like weigh in on that, I know that people who have pandas and certain ticks definitely have like associated like neurological and OCD and anxiety presentations. But like I said, it's not within the purview of my expertise, so I'm not going to comment on it.
Okay. So we covered these questions. So let's get into some of the questions that we had from before. I saw some really good ones. So I'll start with the general ones.
Sure.
I feel like this question everybody's talking about and everybody seems to have it. So, and it came up a few times in our DMs about like fake, how to know what information is fake and what isn't. Do you feel qualified to answer that question?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
And yes and no. I think one of the things that's most challenging about this whole situation is the uncertainty and the unknowability, even on the part of medical professionals and epidemiologists and government authorities who are trying to stay ahead of this. So can I say something like Torah, or is that comfortable? Is that
that's fine. I think
okay.
A good portion or
percentage. I'll say it in English. So the Talmud says that there's no joy like the relief. Oh, we're getting a lot of hearts for the Torah idea. Okay. There's no joy like the relief of doubt. So I think that from that you can also extrapolate the reverse, which is that there's no anguish like being uncertain, like being in a state of doubt. And I think that's part of why this is so overwhelming and so stressful for people. Meaning, if there was like some sort of prediction, a crystal ball, a prophet that could tell us, okay, here's what's going to happen. It's going to be really rough for a couple of weeks, but you're all going to get through it. And, there's going to be a percentage of people who succumb to this illness, just like every day there are people who succumb to every illness, but most of the healthy people who are being responsible will be fine. Then we would all hunker down and just make some cocoa and have our lives. It would be hard, but we would know there's a beginning, middle, end, and it's all going to be okay. But because there's so much unknowability and so much uncertainty, people get really scared. They get really stressed. They get really scared. And there are tiers of it. There's people who get scared of the medical piece of it. They start to worry about what's going to be with the actual virus itself and the impact that it's going to have, especially people who have people in their lives that are elderly and or immunocompromised. It's something that they're concerned about. And then also, the practical ramifications of the idea of people being cooped up in their homes, depending on how big their homes are and how much they like the people they're going to be cooped up with, and what other responsibilities they're going to try to have to be being juggling from home. That's another consideration. And there's the financial, which we mentioned before, which is a very real concern for a lot of small business owners, a lot of people who don't have the luxury of working from home or working while they're parenting, if that's something that needs to be done. So I think this unknown piece is what's very stressful. That having been said, back to the original question of how do we know what's fake news? Mm-hmm. When you get something on a WhatsApp chat and it's oh, please share with everybody, don't forget to tag me, chances are that's fake news. And anything, I think that, I would want to be getting my information from real organizations, the CDC, the Center for Disease Control, the World Health Organization, local government authorities. In some communities, there are rabbis who are meeting with local medical professionals who they have formed an official committee that's doing real research. Try to stick with those sources of information. And even those sources of information are not always lined up in harmony with one another, and they don't always have consistent instructions or information day to day because the situation is unfolding and changing day to day. So really, I think we just need to try to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. Just get okay with it. Just to know, we're not gonna know everything. We're not gonna have all the information. We're just gonna have to be sort of the serenity prayer, God grant me the serenity to accept what I can't change, the courage to change what I can, and the wisdom to know the difference, right? So there's a lot here that we're not able to control, that we're not able to track, that we can't know. And even when we know with a certain amount of certainty today, it's going to change tomorrow, even from the real sources. So definitely don't believe your brother-in-law, the people that are just kind of disseminating. I heard there was somebody in this shul who does it. Don't go with those anecdotal narratives. That's not helping anyone. Although there was actually a really nice email that went around, which of course I can't access because I'm doing this live on my phone. But there was a really nice email that went through all the good news that happened. China's back up and running in a certain extent. Israel is on the brink of a breakthrough. So I don't know if this is true either. But if that's fake happy news,
tag your friends, guys, about this bad good news.
Right.
And then at the end it says tag your friends. So
right.
Same thing.
They tag your friends. Make sure to hit like and subscribe. No. Right. So when it feels like it's a popularity contest, it's probably not fine. So I think anything that sounds like gloom and doom, catastrophic, the world is coming to an end, chances are it's just somebody looking for some drama click. The same, it's hard because on the one hand, we're chuckling, it's lighthearted here, but it is a serious situation. So I had a whole bunch of Instagram, I post on Instagram, I try to post once or twice a day, usually one post and then one story. That's just something I've been trying to do. But today and yesterday I was posting a lot more because I was just getting a lot of people who are clearly just needing some hope to grab onto, that are feeling very overwhelmed by the amount of alarming and fear-mongering content. And I think we just needed to give people something. We all need to sort of like give people something to hold on to give them a sense of like, it could be okay. We're going to be okay. We're going to figure this out one step at a time. And so one of the things, I mentioned this in the book and I mentioned it on Instagram, is that we don't want to trivialize. We don't want to over dramatize. We just want to like,
oh, that's me.
Right.
That's the one that we posted from you.
You saw that post, right? Right. We want to sort of just deal with things as they are, you know, just like analyze and empathize, right? Mm-hmm. Like analyze, notice what's going on. What do I need to do? Practically speaking, and empathize, like be kind. And empathy goes with ourselves too, like empathize with ourselves. Like I'm allowed to have these feelings. I'm not allowed to rage and scream and throw stuff and leak my, you know, stress all over everybody else, but I'm allowed to like, you know, have my own little private cry, my own little private tantrum, my own little, you know, journaling outlet, whatever I need to do.
Dance party.
Sorry?
Dance party.
Dance party for sure. Yeah, whatever it takes. So, yeah. So what was the question?
So you did answer that question, but about fake information, but
yeah. Try to look for things that seem to come from real sources. And sometimes people do fake ones too. That's annoying when people like quote a doctor or they'll quote a hospital or it's like, take everything with a grain of salt.
Yeah.
Especially if you don't like what they're saying.
So we got a few people commenting about like the feeling of being out of control is part of what's like so hard about it. So I know you kind of touched on that a little bit, but if you had any more specific advice to that.
Yeah. So one thing it's good to remember is that we're never totally in control, right? There are always things in our lives that we have autonomy and we have empowerment about. But there are always going to be variables that are outside the scope of our control. There's been a lot of sort of like spiritual messages about that. I'm going to stay away from this because I'm speaking as a mental health professional. But there is something very spiritual about sort of being able to look out at the universe and say, like, I am just one player in a world of whatever it is, 7 billion people. And, you know, and others, trillions of, I don't even know how big the number gets, of microorganisms that I can't, you know, be in control over. And that's always the case. And so I'm going to look at, you know, if you're someone who really does feel better when you can say, well, this is something I can take charge of, then look around your domain and say, what is something that I can do that will make me feel a little bit more like I got like a little more in order. So if it's even just organizing your closet, you know, just cleaning up your home, because we're going to be spending a lot of time in our homes these days. You know, I say that as a card carrying slob, but you know, if you like to be clean, and that makes you feel a little more in control, then that's something you can do for yourself. Again, exercise is really a great way to like kind of like regroup your body and your brain and feel like, okay, I got.
If you could get to a gym.
Sorry?
If you could get to a gym.
Oh, I mean, I don't exercise.
Oh, like just jumping.
Exercise in your own house. Yeah. You know, you could. There's a lot of free exercise videos on YouTube.
That's true. I like the Zumba ones.
Right, you could do those, or even just like if you just go on YouTube, they have all these like free yoga classes and Pilates and aerobics and Zumba, like or go back to the dance party. I feel like it's going to come back to the dance party a lot.
Yeah. Listen, when I try that, if I have a panic attack one day, I will get back to you.
Let me know. And yeah.
But I wanted to bring up another question that is very tied into what you're saying about cleanliness. Someone here said, I'm very into cleanliness and I'm having a hard time with constant mess in my house and end up yelling at my kids more than I usually do. It wasn't really framed in a question.
It was just more like, I guess, what can I do to stop that? I
don't see the question. I remembered that one, so I looked at it and then I didn't realize. Okay.
Yeah, but I guess what this person is just saying is like, what can I do? Yeah. I guess look, again, I love the serenity prayer because it's relevant to so many things. And this is another one of those things. So if cleanliness is really important to you, then if your children are old enough to be taught to clean up after themselves, and this is one of the things that I really do love about homeschooling, is that very often people let their kids get away with being very messy and sloppy because they're running off to school or they have to do their homework or that, you know, like they're always like making excuses for their kids not having good living habits because like their primary focus is scholastic. But when your children are being like full-time citizens of your home, this is a really good opportunity, again, if they're old enough and if we're choosing these battles, not necessarily battles, but like worth bringing these things up to sort of say like, hey, by the way, you know, when you're done with your cereal and milk, you can clear your place. Even, I don't know like how coordinated your 3-year-old but even a 3-year-old could be taught to like scrape their plate into the garbage and rinse the, you know, the food that the utensils that they use, or put back the crackers in the pantry, you know. And even though at that age, like little kids, it's actually more annoying when they do things themselves than if you actually would just do it for them. It's good to get in the habit of letting them do it in their imperfect way, because then you're going to sort of raise people who know how to clean up after themselves and be respectful. So that's number one, you know, training children to be a little bit neater. Instituting policies, you know, if this is a good time, especially because it's, you know, right before Passover, you know, to get people say, hey, you know, we're not eating all over the house. We're eating just in the kitchen and the dining room. If you want to go in your bedroom, you could just take a water bottle, but no other food, you know, things that will make your life easier. And then a combination of kind of figuring out what are the ways that you can invest in your energy and your focus to clear up in a way that's going to make you feel a little calmer, but also not to get overwhelmed by the fact that when people are going to be in the house, it is going to be messier. That's just the reality. And just sort of know I'm going to have to just breathe it out and be a little bit more okay with that frustration until everybody goes to sleep. And then I can do a cleanup where I can actually get everybody involved in doing a cleanup. But I think it's a great opportunity to teach kids to pitch in, whether it's for cleaning up after themselves, food preparation. You know, again, your kids are pretty little, but even a 3-year-old could learn how to spread peanut butter with a plastic or a blunt knife. You know, I don't know if you're allowed to do peanut butter anymore. A lot of people have, well, in your own house, you could do peanut butter.
Yeah. Now that no one's around you.
Right.
Yeah.
But it's hard. It's hard.
Well, it's just, it'll be like the morning activity.
Totally.
I liked this question that Freya, I'm really bad at pronouncing like the random Instagram names, but Freya said, all right, she said, any ideas how to self-care with everyone home? I don't trust the kids to be safe if I escape to my room for a few.
How to self-care when the kids are home, and what was
when everyone's home? Yeah, I don't trust the kids to be safe if I escape to my room for a few.
Right. Okay.
I hear that.
I hear that too. Yeah. Self-care is one of those things that's very subjective, like very individualized. So I guess what she could do, or whoever, you know, has the same problem, is to sort of say, like, depending on how like independent your kids are and how much you could leave them to their own devices. If your spouse is around, if your partner's around, then you could say, like, I need a breather. But make a list of all the things that feel to you like self-care, and figure out like if or how many of them you could do while your children are around. If that's not possible, you may need to just defer until after bedtime, you know, and just sort of like say to the kids, you know what, guys, I'm going to try to be as smiley and as calm as I can, you know, but I need you to cooperate by, you know, and ask them to, you know, do whatever it is that they need to do, play nicely, get along, clean up after themselves, do whatever activity is that you set out for them to do, and just sort of engage with them, but honestly tell them that, like, you know, this is hard for everybody, you know, kind of share that with them. But, you know, self-care is important, but it's, you know, it's not always so easy. You guys sometimes have to get creative.
Like when I drink a coffee, I like enjoy the coffee. What? You're thinking of coffee also?
I was thinking coffee too.
Like an iced coffee, for example.
Yes, I have a really good video on how to make a really yummy latte. Yes. And that you really could do with your kids. I mean, depending on how lively your children are, but if you want to make yourself a nice coffee and make them a little chocolate milk to go with it, and you
my 1-year-old ends up just drinking half my coffee. It's really not okay.
Not fair. Yeah. I used to make my kids chocolate milk and stick ice cubes in it and call it their iced coffee. Like, they knew it was chocolate milk, but it was like, it just felt like an iced coffee because it was in the same kind of cup. And
that's cute.
Yeah. But that's what I mean by get creative. Like, sometimes, you know, but like relishing your food, like trying to be mindful when you're enjoying your food or drink is a good form of self-care. And I know I keep coming back to that dance party thing, but putting on music is great for parents and children.
Even
you know, like
kids music, they make some really good kids music these days.
Like,
we dance to
like adult music too. That's not like the end of the world, as long as it's like not inappropriate lyrics, like Jewish music or whatever, you know, or instrumentals.
Everyone has their standards.
Someone writes, I don't drink coffee. Okay, substitute beverage of your choice. Not too alcoholic.
Or even food, like a good green apple.
Okay. Yeah. I like Fuji apples, but
All right. Well, these are on.
Okay. Somebody
Okay.
writes, I found leaving the house early in the morning alone for a walk is a great way to start the day. That's an awesome way to start the day if you have that luxury. Yes, for sure. It is wonderful. If you're able to leave your house, because you should not be leaving your house if you were told to quarantine, or if there are some regions, some neighborhoods where they're asking people not to go out unnecessarily. But if you can go out, that's amazing, you know, and if you can do it without leaving little children unattended, that's preferable. But even just like if you can't get out, like, but you have a backyard or a porch, just start the day with a little fresh air and deep breathing is very good for people too. So yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Now that the weather's getting better, I mean,
yeah,
I guess we're all
yeah, that's
places,
nice.
but
Yeah, that's a nice silver lining. I was thinking it would be so nice if there was a blizzard, you know.
Yeah. We also missed a comment or question. I have 3 little ones, and that is one of my biggest challenges. I have anxiety, and I feel I have so much on my head, and now I'm working on myself. She said.
Yeah, it's not a question, but it's, you know, it's legit. This stuff is hard. This is really hard. So if you have anxiety in general, then presumably you have a therapist, or you have a resource, or you have medication, like whatever it is that you do to take care of your anxiety in general. You just want to up your game on whatever those things are. But self-care is good. I posted a couple times that like people are putting a lot of pressure on themselves to create home routines and homeschooling that is very wholesome and very educational and very Pinterest worthy. Don't do that to yourself if you hate it. Right? Like if you're very anxious, then just attend to your anxiety and make sure that your children have a healthy mommy or daddy. Like just be there for yourself and for your children, and the other stuff will come. Like you can get to it. I don't want to sound like I am promoting underachieving and chaos. Like if you're someone who enjoys making color-coded schedules and coming up with like really fun creative homeschooling activities and ideas. It's funny, like I'm on these like homeschooling chats as a homeschooling mom. So people are always sending like pictures of their kids doing like robotics and doing very educational creative activities in their homes. And it was so funny the last day or two, now all those pictures that are usually popping up on my homeschooling chat are popping up everywhere on all the other chats, because like everyone else is like, hey, look what we did, look what we baked, look what we put together. Like, oh, like, now everybody's doing this. It's really cute. So, but that having been said, not everybody is really doing it. Some people are doing it, some people are not. Some people's kids are watching a lot of Disney. It's all good.
Yeah. That's actually right. Like someone asked exactly that. And so I just want to say their question while you're talking about it. I'm not a trained teacher, and I feel like I am failing my kids by not being good at homeschooling them. I've never felt like such a bad parent. Can you give some tips on homeschooling?
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. So I don't know how old the children in this question are, like, you know, how old the kids are, but I will tell you the following, depending on where you're, you know, viewing from. I want to point something out. In many, I would say most of yeshivas, at least in the New York area, most of the teachers are actually not, you know, credentialed teachers either. In most of the local schools around here, they are not people with a master's in education. A lot of them are 19, 20, 21-year-olds, young women who don't have any more training, or have less training than you in a way, because they've never been parents either. So, so teaching is something that, yes, you know, if you have a master's in some sort of education or an expertise in a field, then you are more qualified to teach. But I have to tell you that as someone who went through the school system myself, and before we started homeschooling, I had my kids in the school system, I saw zero correlation between level of experience and level of training, and how great a teacher actually was at connecting with my child. And I know that's an extremely controversial thing to say. I was actually also one of those unqualified teachers. I taught Tanakh in high school and at the college level while I was in grad school before I became a therapist. And my degree was in linguistics and psychology, so nothing to do with teaching. So, you know, they can teach you how to teach in grad school, but they can't teach you how to be a relatable teacher. And so a lot of the teachers in the schools who are superstars are just people who have a gift at connecting to children and making information exciting. The best teacher that I ever had as a child was a 20-year-old young woman who just like made up songs and projects and games and activities about everything. I still remember things that she taught us like by heart, because she was just so gifted. So you can do this too, but you don't necessarily have to. I said on my stories today, one of the things that I shared was one of the best pieces of advice I got years ago when we started out homeschooling was, don't feel like you have to have clarity on everything that you're going to do at once, right? This is an ongoing process. It's organic, it's dynamic, it evolves constantly. What we do is in August, we usually sit down and like towards the end of August, and we kind of go through each of the subjects and figure out for each kid, like I sit down with each of my kids and say, okay, how do you want to do the subject? My kids actually tend to prefer physical workbooks and textbooks over online resources. We use a little bit of both, but we kind of like go through each subject, but we end up changing it up sometimes in the middle of the year. Like, oh, I thought I was going to like that program, but actually it's a little boring. It's a little too easy. I don't understand it, or whatever. Different reasons why we tweak as we go along. And those are great life lessons that sometimes you try something out and then you find a better program or a better system where you figure out that something's not working well and you troubleshoot. So even more so when it's kind of like sprung on you last minute, this isn't something that you had time to research. So the most important thing you can do for your children is really smile at them and love them and attend to them. Really, I'm so serious.
Yeah.
because the school learning will come. Most of us, I consider myself a somewhat educated adult. I'm, master's level professional. I've forgotten most of what I learned in high school and middle school. I still know how to read and do basic mathematics. Trigonometry has never come up. No one has ever asked me about SOHCAHTOA after that region. So the majority of what you're going to learn in scholastics is not particularly relevant to being a healthy, well-adjusted, productive, marketable human. We want to give our kids mental health tools. We want to give them joy. We want to make them feel loved. We want to give them a sense of confidence. And you can do all those things without a master's in education. If your kids are little, reading to them is a fantastic way of just cultivating language and comprehension, reading to them, reading with them. One thing that's really great to know actually is that a lot of it's actually, you really see the beautiful side of humanity sometimes in a time of crisis. There are a lot of educational professionals and resources that are making their material available for free or at significant reductions. So if you go on scholastic.com, they're doing everything for free. Aleph Beta, which is a Torah resource for older kids and adults, actually, it's really nice stuff. If you want, I can send you, I have like from my homeschooling chat, there are list and list of different, you can put it on.
I'm sure people would like to hear about those resources.
There's tons, there's so many links. There's a really, really nice resource called howtohomeschoolforfree.com. And it has like thousands of like articles and links, thousands of links and hundreds of articles, a ton of like crowdsourcing stuff with mostly free printouts, worksheets, coloring sheets, activities, stuff to read. There's one called timeforlearning.com. I think that might have been a paid subscription, but it was cheap that you can use. We order workbooks, very often grade level workbooks that people can use. So you can create a schedule. Like it's funny, we get a lot of like opposite messages and opposite like, oh, Rebecca's reminding us that she has the Project Proactive Haggadah.
Oh, Rebecca, I was literally just thinking about you if I should talk about that yet or not. I didn't know if it was going to be like, if we were going to roll it out and make it a surprise. But yeah, guys, get excited for that.
Okay. Do you want to say it now?
I'll just talk about it really fast. It's Rebecca has been working on it's called the Proactive Haggadah, which is like a Haggadah that you can kind of learn through and talk through with your kids. There are little like hidden mental health techniques and tactics in there, and it's really cool and something like it's an activity and an education thing that people can do at home with their kids. Like it's so nice. I'm so excited for it. So
that's amazing. So there's a lot of, this is the best possible time in human history to be in charge of your children's education. Even from the time that we started, let's say like, I don't know, like 10 years ago, I started researching homeschooling. There are so many more blogs, even for Jewish resources. There were only like 2 or 3 like Jewish bloggers. And now there are so many. There's WhatsApp chats, there's a Yahoo email group, and you don't necessarily have to, there's Facebook groups that tell you different resources. And there's one in particular that's really nice. If you go on shabbat.com/parsha, so that website, it's completely free. I used to buy these cassette tapes for my kids by Rabbi, I don't know how you say his name, Juravel. I don't know how to say it, but it's Juravel. And he had these cassette tapes that were like an hour long or more. And he speaks in like this sing-songy little kid voice. And he teaches Parsha in a very comprehensive way, incorporating real midrashim. And he has a particular hashkafa, so you have to check if that's comfortable for you. But overall, he like just gives like a really thorough learning of what the Parsha is and different life lessons and the side stories that make it come to life. So I used to put those on for my children on cassette tapes, but they have on shabbat.com/Parsha. these Rabbi Jaravel recordings. I think you have to give them your email address, like sign up to receive emails from Shabbat.com, but you don't have to pay for them. And it keeps little kids, I would say from the ages like 5 to like 10. I mean, older kids could listen to it too, but it's like in that kind of sing-songy storytelling voice that's more geared towards little kids. Honestly, I've learned midrashim that I didn't know from it. So the information itself is pretty sophisticated, but the delivery is designed for children. And so what I would sometimes do is I would put those on, and the kids would color and listen to them. And it was just a very calming, like pleasant activity. So these parshiot, like Vayakal Pekudei right now and going into Vayikra, are kind of technical. You could use them and listen to them. I don't even know if he has, because Vayakal Pekudei are kind of a repeat of Tichurim Tzitava and of Shat level. But what you can do is you can go back to, Shmot Va'era Bo B'Shalach and use those to teach the Pesach story, because those are really the Yetziat Mitzrayim stories. So he goes into great detail. It's not Haggadah, but it's the whole Sipur Yetziat Mitzrayim.
Oh, okay.
So those are great. So
we really got to get a list going.
Sorry?
I said we really got to get a list going.
Yes. I'm going to try to put together a list of resources, and you can link it when you do this on the YouTube video. And you probably have someplace that we're on your Project Proactive website, right? Maybe a blog post, because there really are so many resources. But guys, if for those of you, remember, on the one hand, that's what I was starting to say before, you're getting like extremes, both in terms of how to deal with the coronavirus and how to deal with managing your children at this time. There's the people who are like very like, we have to follow all the rules, and we have to have systems, and we have to get organized, and we have to, right? And then there are the people who are like, just chill, just relax, just be okay, just allow your feelings to be, and a healthy approach is kind of like somewhere in the middle, a little bit of both. So I think, when it comes to homeschooling your children, if what you need to do is just kind of like get through the day, eat your Fruit Loops with them, have fun, play, make it really just relaxing and nice to be home, that's fine, especially if your kids are
like
little.
What someone said, jump on a mattress and turn the TV on.
There you go. That's the bed. So that's you can turn anything into a school subject, really. By the way, just on the subject of putting your kids in front of screens, there are like kind of gradations of educationality. I don't think that's a word. Educationalness, also not a word, but of what your kids are watching. So you're not going to put on like, Die Hard for your 3-year-olds. But you could put on things like, even if you're deciding between, let's say, I don't know what's like around nowadays, but let's say Caillou versus the Magic School Bus, right? So the Magic School Bus is definitely more chock full of science information. Caillou is harmless and teaches, I don't know, whiny life skills, something, I don't know. But if you're choosing between a couple of different entertainment options and your kids don't really care one way or another, you can do a little bit more like digging and find something that's a little bit more educational, so that you could feel like, okay, they may be sitting in front of a screen being entertained, but they're learning something, right? But again, that's only if it's something that's important to you.
Right. I'm like, my kid just wants to watch Spider-Man fall off a building all day. What is happening?
Okay, gravity.
Yeah.
Science.
But that is a question that we had about TV and like feeling like a bad parent when you're putting your kid in front of the TV too much.
Okay. So look, if you're someone who's against TV for ideological reasons or religious reasons, far be it from me to try to tell you to not live in harmony with your beliefs. But if you're someone who believes in a moderate, judicious amount of screen entertainment, and you're just feeling bad about the fact that you're, being a little more permissive than usual, I would say, listen, right now, these are unusual times. And you need to do primarily our children's physical and mental health are front and center, and our own, by the way. Everybody's physical and mental health are more important than their academic performance right here and now. So if what you need for your physical health, because they need to be in quarantine or they need to be home, whatever, and not out in school contracting illness, is to be able to put on a show for them, put on a movie for them, put on a game for them, so that they can be entertained and you can get work done, or you can just catch your breath. That's okay. Like, you can let yourself do that. That being said, if you want to like achieve a little bit more and say, okay, you know what, I want to put together a list of channels, websites, YouTube videos that are going to be a little bit more educational that my kid won't mind watching. Like, my feeling is always kind of like, if they're down to watch something, like if they're open to watching something that's more educational and it makes no difference to them whether it's something like silly or something educational, then might as well opt for the more educational show. You know, but again, right now it has to be what works for your family. That being said, you could also say, for now, I'm in survival mode. You know, and so survival mode calls for, you know, doing what I need to do to get through the day. What I can do is take some of that time that I earned by putting on, you know, a silly video for the kids and collect my thoughts and figure out, like, if this goes on for a while, what do I want to do? You know, how do I want to structure it a little bit better so that it will be a little bit more wholesome, a little bit more, you know, feeding their minds. You know, so that balance between, you know, cutting yourself slack, cutting your kids slack, not driving yourself crazy to make it like everything like perfect and on an exact schedule and on a routine and everything being, you know, super educational. But at the same time, also saying, you know what, I still want to create a little bit of a sense of a routine, a little bit of a feeling of like, we're here to learn stuff so that, you know, so that their brains don't completely turn to mush.
Yeah.
What other questions do we have?
What? So we have, I think we're like covering a lot because a lot of them overlap.
Sure.
There was a question, like it didn't come up at all in our conversation, but it has to do with claustrophobia.
Yeah.
I think she was just wondering in general what people do about claustrophobia, because she says that she lives in an apartment and her family's on top of her and she feels like she can't breathe. Like what?
That's really hard. That's really, really hard. Yeah, I don't have a very clear and obvious solution. For some people who are claustrophobic, opening the windows helps, like even opening all the shades so you don't have privacy, but you can like see the world. It gives you a little bit of an illusion of like expansiveness, openness. Even ordering some, I don't know if this is a possibility, but ordering big mirrors creates a space, like illusion of having a little bit more space. If it's possible, if there's somewhere that's, I don't know how strict this, you know, if they're really quarantined in an apartment, they can't go anywhere, then they're really limited. So some deep breathing, some yoga, some meditation, you know, cutting herself some slack. If she can go out in the hallway, I don't know if she's allowed to go in the hallway, just walk up and down the stairs of her apartment building, that might give her a breather. If she could have her husband or partner, you know, watch the children so that she can just go into the room and take some space in a bedroom for herself and do some deep breathing. You know, all of those are things that can sort of like give some serenity. But you know, my heart goes out to someone who's claustrophobic and stuck in an apartment. You know, these are Band-Aids. You know, it might. I'm not a big pill pusher, but if you're someone who has like clinical claustrophobia, anxiety with panic attacks, this might be a time to consider medication for as a stopgap measure, because it's you could really suffer. Yeah.
It's a tough one. Someone brought up actually right now Pesach. So it came up in a few questions, like just the anxiety about Pesach plans, and again with the unknown. I guess we didn't really talk about it in context of planning for Pesach.
Yeah. And it's just everything's kind of up in the air. It seems like most of the Passover programs are being, you know, canceled because they're discouraging anybody from traveling. So if people were planning to go, even just to family in another area, I do think that it would be wise for us to calmly start thinking in terms of making your own yontif. Like if you were gonna not plan to be home, think, okay, if I were gonna be home for Pesach, what would that look like? And start calmly and not in a panicky way putting together lists and figuring out what you would need to do, because making Pesach takes it takes time and it takes preparation. It does not need to be 4-course meals. You can make a very simple Pesach, you know, but still, you know, the cleaning is the cleaning and the matzah is the matzah, and having enough, you know, Pesach dishes and pots and everything. If you're not someone who's made Pesach before, I would encourage people to think in terms of assuming that their Pesach plans might be home with immediate family.
Yeah, and in Memphis, those shelves are going to be empty and like
that's day. Yeah.
I
maybe I'm like being too optimistic about this, but I feel like the people in charge of supplying kosher food and matzah and wine in communities where there are enough Jews to warrant suppliers will figure this out for us. You know what I mean? Like they know that Pesach has to happen.
I mean, you're from New York, right? Are you from New York?
Yeah, so I'm spoiled that way. Yeah.
Like,
I mean,
what?
Yes, I said I'm spoiled that way. I know I'm privileged. There's a lot of kosher.
So New York and Chicago, you will be fine probably. I mean, like us out of town communities, like we barely have enough Pesach stuff as is.
In the first place. Look, but you do have access to rabbis, and if there's a shortage, then you'll call your rabbis and you'll say, what do we do now? Right? We can only work with what we have. So either they're going to teach you how to bake your own matzah, right?
Yeah.
Or, right, just like the Jews in Egypt did the very first Pesach,
Yeah, exactly.
right? Or they're going to give some sort of a heter, or there'll be some sort of like caravan of matzahs come. Like something's going to happen one way or another, right? Either there will be provisions or there won't be provisions. And in any case, we have leadership who will help us figure out how to handle the situation.
Right. It's about minions and auxiliary.
Yeah, people were like panicking about the fact that the minion was getting canceled. Sorry. Oh, somebody says my family owns a matzah bakery in Canada. There will be enough matzah. Okay, right. You can hold all Sue Celine to her promise to ship it to Memphis.
Yeah.
Right.
All right, let me just get to the last couple questions so we could wrap up.
Sure.
All right, we did that one. Yeah, I mean, I keep seeing the same like themes.
Like I'm overwhelmed by my kids. How am I going to do this?
Yeah. And like the out of control stuff, the anxiety stuff. Yeah, I think we did get to. Oh, here's one about young adults who are now home living with their parents in such close proximity.
Oh, yeah.
For an unknown amount of time. How do I create boundaries then that don't come off sounding disrespectful? It's an interesting one.
That's a good one. Yeah, I had a couple of clients this week who are in that situation, like young adults who are living with their family of origin. It really depends on the nature of your relationship with your family. If it's a healthy enough relationship where you could sort of say to your parents, guys, I love you and thank you for providing for me and letting me live here, even though I'm old enough to go and earn a living for myself. I think that in order to preserve my sanity, I'm going to need to have some alone time in my room sometimes. And, if you need me, like if I need to be participating or helping or pitching in, of course I will. But, do you think it'd be possible for me to just carve out a little bit of alone space just because sometimes I just get overwhelmed by what's going on here? Just to kind of like express your needs in a loving, appreciative, respectful way. That should be something that should be doable. And if you live in a community where you're being told that it's okay to go out and get fresh air, even if you're not supposed to be sort of socializing, then do that as much as you can. Even if it's chilly where you are, bundle up and just like go out for a walk, catch some air. And that's also for the claustrophobic person. The claustrophobic. I was assuming that she can't leave the house, but if she could leave the house, absolutely. Bundle up your kids and get out and get some air. Even if you can't go places, like you can't go to a library or an activity place, but you can still go out and get fresh air as much as you can in the backyard.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, that's it. We covered I think we did cover all the questions that I had.
Yeah, the one thing I feel a little bad about is that I think that people would have liked a little bit more like practical guidance about homeschooling. But I did mention those websites, and I'm hoping to either tonight or tomorrow. Should I email you or either you or Rebecca? I'll email you some resources, and you can link it to your website and or that YouTube video when you put it up.
Yeah, for sure.
Or go on, people can utilize those resources.
Yeah, we could put it up anyway. We could put it as a blog. We could put it as just a link, whatever.
Yeah, there's plenty of ways to do this because there really are ways to structure. Like I really was tonight. I wanted to get across the message of like, don't pressure yourself to be like a super duper homeschooler. But there really are ways to make homeschooling really fun and really enjoyable and creative and educational. So once you've gotten to the point where you're not stressing yourself out to do that and you just want to learn how to do it, there are things that can be done.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. All right.
I'm still curious as to how many people are actually homeschooling now, because in Memphis it's not
so there are about 2 million homeschooled children in the United States today, and the numbers are rising every year. I actually said to my husband, I wonder if we're going to see a rise in the number of homeschoolers next year because because look, some people are going to be like, I never want to do this again. But I wonder if a lot of my like colleagues and friends who homeschool will say like, oh, we started out homeschooling because my kid had surgery and they needed to just be home and we fell in love with it. And then everybody in our family wanted to homeschool. And a lot of people, that's their story. And, at the beginning, it's overwhelming and it's like, how am I going to do this? I'm not a professional teacher, blah, blah. Right. But then when you get the hang of it, like I already had seen some posts on Instagram and messages from people, from my friends who were saying like, Elisheva, aren't you proud of me? Look at me. And they would like send me pictures of their kids doing creative stuff. I'm like, see, it could be really fun when you get into it.
Yeah.
And for those of you who sent to yeshivas, I don't even want to say the number of dollars of tuition that we save by homeschooling our children.
Oh, yeah.
It's incredible.
I'm sure.
Yes, that's not actually the reason that we started with it, but it's a benefit.
That's a good perk.
Yeah, it's amazing. So yeah, so if anybody's interested, we can definitely do like another talk at some point on just like the details of homeschooling, not when you're in a crisis, but it really can be a wonderful experience. And even though it's overwhelming at first, like all new things, you know, with a little bit of a paradigm shift and a little bit of like research and practice, it can be something that you hopefully will look back on with your children and say, that was a beautiful experience. That was a really nice time that we spent in our homes, in our four walls, just sort of like in the warmth and love of our family. It was hard, it was messy, it was new, but it was exciting, and we did fun stuff together. Take pictures.
Take pictures.
The pictures don't you know, show the stress. You know?
Yeah.
Everybody's just
everyone's smiling like this.
You see like the smoke coming out of people's noses. The crazy eyes say it all. Yeah. Guys, keep laughing.
Okay, on that note.
Yes. Laughter is good medicine. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on tonight and coming
on. It was so nice talking to you, Shoshana. Yeah.
And yeah, we'll be in touch then, and we'll all be in touch. So yeah,
support
take care
each
of
other,
yourselves,
people.
everyone.
Social distancing, not social isolation. Support each
go.
other, cry on each other's virtual shoulders. Oh, can I make one more comment? Actually, there was something I wanted to say, that when this whole thing started, I was seeing like some of these coronavirus memes and jokes and whatever. And at first I was like a little horrified. I'm like, oh my gosh, people are like really sick and in hospitals and ventilators. Like, we should not be making jokes about this. It's in such poor taste. But as the days wore on, I started to realize that laughter really is good medicine for people. And if you're someone who's offended by the jokes, then don't make them, don't post them, don't read them. But if you're someone who wants to laugh because it's just easier than crying sometimes, don't feel bad about that. Like, it's not right or wrong. It's just kind of like what you do with it. Be sensitive. If you know someone who's actually ill, then they may not want to see your meme. But in general, like it's okay to have a little bit of graveyard kind of humor when you're going through a tough time. It's, you know, I think it's okay.
Yeah,
okay.
that's a good point too. All right. Thank you.
Have a wonderful night, everybody. Good luck.
Good luck.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.